America is the home of the free. It seems as if all Americans enjoy the freedom and liberties our country has to offer, when in fact, modern-day slavery is happening in areas throughout the country. Sex trafficking is an issue of human rights that needs to be addressed and brought more prominently to the light. With the influence of the media, particularly TV shows and movies, most locals assume sex trafficking only happens outside the walls of the United States, when in reality it is happening in our own backyard. According to Sally Quillian Yates, the former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, criminals traffic in human beings who are abducted or coerced to leave their homes abroad, or even their homes here in the United States, and quickly discover that their captors' plans are to force them into servitude through brute force and intimidation. Worst of all, the problem is getting even worse, particularly in Atlanta.
Atlanta, home to the country's and the world's busiest airport, the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, becomes the ideal location to entrap victims and have them disappear without a trace. In addition, Atlanta has a very high and extremely profitable demand for street prostitution. It was estimated that sex trafficking contributed $290 million in Atlanta's revenue in 2014, more than twice as much as the Atlanta Falcon football team's 2013 payroll. According to a recent study by the Urban Institute, sex traffickers can make the most profit in Atlanta, earning up to $33,000 a week, more than any other major cities in the country. There is a connection between consumerism and sex trafficking. In a culture of consumption, especially in the urban Atlanta, majority is influenced by the need and greed mentality of modern consumerism. The desire for cheap goods and services, in this case commercialized sex, fuels the demand and hence triggers the supply side of human trafficking. The underground sex economy is blooming and grew along with the aid of the above-board economy. The services of sex traffickers and escorts depend on other legal businesses such as hotels, drivers, secretaries as facilitators to operate their illegal one. For example, sex trafficking often takes place in business like massage spas, hair salons, bars, or hotels. Offenders may avoid prosecution by bribing local employees and even law enforcement agents with payment to look the other way while sex traffickers operate their services. Moreover, there is very little punishment for sex traffickers and those that purchase the services from the sex traffickers. As Jane O'Hanson stated on a CNN online news report, the girls who are being forced into prostitution are going to jail, but the males who are sex trafficking the girls are not being arrested for it. It almost seems as if it is a crime to be forced to have sexual relationships rather than being the person to traffic others.
While sex traffickers are living in luxury and reaping in all the benefits Atlanta offers them, there remains the victims whose lives have been changed for the worse. Sex trafficking is considered the crime hidden in plain sight, because a kidnapping can happen right in front of you, and by the time you're aware of it, it is too late. Traffickers, like any other criminal, will take the path of least resistance. So if the targeted victim is not behaving or reacting a certain way, they will find an easier target. Typically, audiences tend to imagine sex traffickers as what is depicted in media, for example, the Albanian sex trafficking ring in the well-known film Taken. And because of De Boer's idea of the spectacle, in which media production powerhouses share and spread ideas for audiences to absorb, the stereotyped image of a sex trafficker seems to be inseparable from the common image of a sex trafficker. Unfortunately, sex traffickers do not necessarily look any different from we do, and will typically play any role in order to entrap girls. In fact, about 98% of commercially sex trafficked victims are female. In many cases, sex traffickers will go after young females who come from broken families and seek attention outside of the home to fill in the void that a family member does not.
Being with this trafficker, being with this pimp, who protects me, who says he loves me, and yes, I'm physically abused, and yes, I'm sexually exploited, but it's a lot better than my stepfather coming into my bed every other night.
That was Katrina Owens, a survivor of sex trafficking in Atlanta, who released her story to Public Square Atlanta. At first, it seems as if victims willingly go along with the men who claim to love and care for them. However, The sex traffickers are exploiting their emotional instability. They use their need for attention as a way to guilt and threaten victims to remain quiet and obedient. There are arguments that because the girls are willing to take the steps towards this lifestyle, they are in violation of illegal prostitution and should be prosecuted as well. But can you imagine being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused? But in your mind, no one else in the world cares about you, and any other situation is actually worse than getting the little food and attention the sex trafficker gives you. For once, the victim is being offered a choice that is absolutely horrific, but apparently still not as terrible as the lives they left behind.
In Georgia, we know there is a range from 200 to 300 girls that will be trafficked each month in our capital. And tonight there will be 100 girls that will be exploited in Metro Atlanta. So the question remains, why are so many people in Atlanta ignorant, completely unaware, or indifferent to this problem? In many cases, they are not the victim of sex trafficking, the victims are not related to them, or sex trafficking does not populate the media fast enough. In fact, some people believe that sex trafficking only exists in other places around the world as media will typically display. As a result, sex trafficking becomes easily forgotten. Furthermore, we can use the Foucault's concept of power and surveillance, which assumes that most people believe that there is a bigger power or a set of eyes always looking over their surroundings, whether it be actual people, recording devices, or traffic cameras, etc. As a result, many people turn their back and assume that someone else will take action, as surely other people have more time or the government FBI will take care of it.
Luckily, in recent years, Atlanta has taken initiative to put an end to the industry. One prominent leader who has taken initiative to end the crime is Louis Giglio, pastor of Passion City Church in Atlanta. Louis created a platform to raise awareness for slavery, known as the End It Movement, consisting of the world's leading organizations which fight for freedom. Every year, they assign one day in February where supporters are encouraged to post a picture with a red X marked on their hand on social media platforms with the hashtag #EndIt. With the red X taking over the internet every year, Louis hopes people will gain a better understanding of the reality of the sex industry, not only in Atlanta, but also the U.S. Despite Louis' coalition having made national headlines, beloved Atlanta has stayed local by helping women who desire freedom from prostitution, trafficking, and addiction in the city of Atlanta. Beloved provides a 2-year housing program free of charge for survivors of sex trafficking in Atlanta. Beloved also encourages educational growth by offering GED programs, tutoring, job readiness training, and assistance with job placement. Founder Amelia Quinn states, "We often look at women in prostitution as criminals, but we believe that each woman deserves to be respected by her community. She is gifted, strong, and trustworthy. She is a survivor." While media tends to display a stereotyped light towards sex trafficking, CNN, whose headquarters are located in downtown Atlanta, launched a campaign known as the CNN Freedom Project. The platform itself is accessed through a blog where stories of survivors all over the world are highlighted. The CNN Freedom Project has also paired up with nonprofits who are taking the initiative to end sex trafficking, helping victims and raising awareness. One of the organizations featured, called Free the Girls, ships bras abroad to communities where women can sell them for a source of income rather than becoming entrapped in the slave industry. After being featured on the CNN Freedom Project blog, the response was incredible, as the company received enough donations to ship 32,000 bras to Mozambique. This just comes to show that even a media source producing content can make a huge impact by raising awareness for the sex industry.
With the rise of women equality reforms, there is no better time to bring awareness to Atlanta's sex trafficking problem. While there are plenty of initiatives and activist groups working in the Atlanta area to initiate safety measures and offer a safe place for victims of sex trafficking, by sharing facts, statistics, and survivor stories, we hope to bring this horrific problem in Atlanta and even around the country, to more people, and hopefully one day stop these criminals from harming defenseless females.